the recording not finalizing on Teams. Okay, we're recording now. Okay, so welcome to today's session, must know Excel features for Python and Excel. So this session is all about what are some of the tools that you should know about in Excel that are going to help you get the most out of Python and Excel. So it's not really a Python class, it's not really an Excel class, it's a little bit of both. We are sharing an environment between Python and Excel. So the way that, the plumbing, the infrastructure works, there are definitely some like features and some nuances that you should be aware of. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We are recording. This is going to be a shorter session, I think. It's very unlikely it'll take the full hour, so you'll probably get out of here earlier, and then of course the recording will go out over email. Okay, so those of you who don't know me, my name is George Bond. I'm a data analytics trainer, consultant, and author and speaker based in Cleveland, Ohio, Microsoft Excel MVP. I do courses with LinkedIn Learning as well. So I do these sessions to, give back to the community, try new materials, and get my name out there. I know a lot of you have been at like a lot of these sessions, really appreciate it. Hopefully that, shows how like valuable my content is. And, if you can, I'll talk about reviews in a little bit. Leave a review. That always helps as well here. So the objectives for today, we're going to talk about a few, like we said, must know Excel features here. Power Query. How does Power Query fit into Python and Excel? What are linked data types? What role do they play? Structured references, the importance of tables, the importance of dynamic arrays, the importance of images in cells. So these are all features that have come out in the last probably 5 or so years, with the exception of, I guess, tables and Power Query. But a lot of these are newer things. So I want to show you just like most technology, Python and Excel didn't kind of come into being on its own, right? There's a whole lot of other stuff that it's built on top of that you need to know about, especially when we are in this kind of a shared development environment with Python and Excel together. So if you do have any questions, I would just direct your focus down to the chat. Gonna try to keep an eye on the Q&A as well, because apparently some people can only see things via that based on like your employer's settings. So if I don't see you via the Q&A, just give me a little patience. I think it's a lot to look at. Okay, so let me copy the link here. First step is grabbing the downloads. Downloads are now in the chat. So if you could just grab that link there, and let me put this in the Q&A as well, in case anybody's hanging out in there. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is just click the link, and it pretty much should download for you. The only curveball is extracting. Just make sure you extract right up here. Okay, otherwise should be pretty straightforward, and you should see something like a slide deck. Actually, I think I moved some of these files out, so let me show you the latest and greatest here. Okay, there should be a slide deck and some Excel workbooks, basically. Okay, give that a second. I don't see it. Okay, and I see a preemptive thumbs up there. Yeah, so if you could just let me know via the thumbs up or however you would like that you've got the files, they are there, okay, and that we are ready to roll. I'm gonna wait for one more thumbs up there, and then we'll go. I know it's Friday. It's the end of the week. Many of us are probably tired, but just need, yes. Okay, good. Thank you, Raymond. Okay. Yeah. Helpful with online training, especially, I do have everybody's cameras and microphones turned off because otherwise there's ambient noise often. But if you could, yeah, little cues like that definitely help me know I'm not drifting off into my own orbit there. So, okay. So we're going to go ahead and focus on the Python and Excel features demo right here. So go ahead and open up that file, okay? And we're going to walk through how this stuff gets put together. Okay, so I do see somebody coming into the chat now. let me go ahead and just copy and paste. So for those of you who just joined us, I left a link to the downloads in the chat if you want to download that so you can follow along. So the first thing we're going to look at is using Power Query with Python and Excel. So Python can work with a lot of APIs, databases. It can do web scraping, and I know these are all topics that people are interested in because they ask me about. At the moment, Power Query really remains the portal to the outside world when it comes to working with Python in Excel. So Python in Excel is primarily a tool for data visualization, data analysis, machine learning, and you can check out some of my other resources for that. But we're going to look at if you do have data coming in from Power Query and you want to connect that to Python and Excel, how does that work? What does it look like? And we're going to use this data table here. I'll put it in the chat, may as well do that too. So this is just a population table of countries by population. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and load this in to Python and Excel via Power Query. So let's just take that link. I'm going to go to data. I'm going to go to from web. Okay. Now this, depending if you're on a laptop, the drop-down features might be a little different. So wherever you see from web, it might be like under get data. You might have to nest it a little bit further. I think maybe under from sources, you'll see it too. So just depending on the size of your screen, but we're going to read this in from the web. Okay. And you'll see how easy this is to get live data. Maybe you've never done this before either. But let's go ahead and do that. I'll click OK. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and make that connection. So we're trying to scrape data from the web right now. And again, Python can't do this, but we don't have that opportunity to kind of reach out to the outside world. With Python and Excel right now, Power Query really remains that go-to source for that. Okay, so we'll see what we get here. Okay, and we got some suggestions here. This is really the one that I want. Okay, so list of countries and inhabited territories by total population. And let's go ahead and let's just load it right in. We could clean it, but this is not a Power Query class like we talked about. It would probably be a good idea to rename these headers and stuff like that. But let's go ahead and just load this right in to Excel. I'm going to create this only as a connection. The whole idea here is that because you can load data that's very big, that you might not want to display in your workbook, and you want to bypass the million row limit in Excel, you want to analyze bigger data sets with Python via data that was collected from Power Query. With this, what's really going to happen is that we have the data, but it's only connected there on the back end. Okay, so let me know if you were able to do that. I've loaded the data into Power Query. Okay, and you should see something like this. It looks like I had done this earlier already. So you might see if you go to data and queries and connections, you'll see probably two because I think I did this earlier and it just didn't wipe out the connection. But hopefully everybody sees something like this. Give everybody a second to do that. Okay, maybe yours is still loading. Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you, Belgian. Okay. All right. So yeah, I just need one. That's all I ask. This is a free session, so any participation helps. Please keep my sanity. Okay. All right. So we have two queries here. This query is a bit of a mouthful by name right now. So what I would suggest to do is name it something like, now World Pop, of course, you already used that name. But let's just call this something like World Pop Query or something like that. And underscores tend to work really well. Python likes this kind of a naming convention. This is called snake case notation. So everything's lowercase, all the words are separated by underscores. So this tends to work pretty well in the Python world, in Python and Excel. So this is our query. Okay, so what we're going to do with this is let's go over to py and I'll call this something like world pop df, df for data frame, just a typical naming convention in Python and Excel. And what we're going to do is use this XL function. Now the XL function is just a read function. So this is the way that we can import data in from Excel into Python and Excel. So there's Excel, and now what we're going to do is just look for world population query. It's right there. I'll go ahead and put this in the chat. Control Enter. When you see the busy signal, that really is just a busy signal. It's just taking a little bit there to read that data in. So give it a second there. Okay. And you should see a data frame. So what we can do from here is we've got the data available, Control Alt Shift and M. If we wanted to print out the entire thing, maybe self-defeating, right? Because we talked about, we don't necessarily want to show all the data. If we're working with a big data set, it might be too big to even display all the rows, depending on the size of the data set with Power Query. We could be working with millions of rows. So we might look at using some other features, which is kind of a good lead in to the next feature, which is working with linked data types. Any questions about what we did there so far? Hopefully everybody was able to follow that and you were able to connect to a data source in Power Query. So a lot of possibilities there. The only downside with this is if you wanted assistance with Copilot for Python, if you wanted generative AI help, Excel kind of assumes that your data set is printed as a table in your workbook. So, we can't necessarily get a lot of help with generative AI to, complete an analysis for us unless that data set's actually printed in the worksheet. So pros and cons to using Python in Excel and Power Query together. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to linked data types. So one thing that you're going to notice when you're working with these results with Python and Excel is that there's this data card here up at the top. Okay, so if you never used linked data types before, let's go ahead and just go ahead. I'm going to put United States here, for example, and maybe I'll put Canada. Okay, so we have geographic entities that are listed here. Maybe we want just a little bit more context about these entities. That's what linked data types are all about. So when you've got something, whether it's a country or a stock, or if you're doing something custom, maybe it's like a particular SKU or an employee, there's often kind of there's this idea of a knowledge graph, right? There are different entities and things related to that item that you'd want to know about. So if we go up here to data, there's actually right here, it says data types. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and convert these to the geographic data type. And if I do that, you'll see a couple things happen. First of all is we get this little data card, and this looks familiar to that up here, data frame for a reason. It's the same kind of underlying features. So we see the data card here. We get a little bit of a pop-up. It gives us some information, right, about this particular country. We can do the same over here. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So again, imagine you have different parts or, departments or something, and you want to easily pull up like, what are the dimensions? What's the MSRP? Stuff like that. You can do that. You can create those custom. Okay. And this is the same technology that we're using here. We can also, if we wanted to, display these right in the grid. So if you hit this little plus sign here with the table, okay, you'll see, I could put the abbreviation here. I could put, if I put the capital, I think the capital itself is even a linked data type. So we could, go further down the chain. And that data, since this is also a geographic entity, has some properties of itself that we can pull. So pretty cool feature. And again, we're really talking about more of this in the context of Python and Excel. But this is what we've got here. We've got a linked data type, which means that first step is if we click on this PY, we will get some supplemental information. In this case, we're going to say, okay, this is called a data frame. This is the object type that's being stored with this data type. So it's 238 by 6, and you'll notice that we get a little bit of preview of the data. So again, if you don't want to show all the data, but you just want to preview. So it's almost like a tooltip, if you've used like Power BI or Tableau, pretty cool feature there. And the other thing with that that's really nice is, again, same kind of idea. If we just want a preview of the data, okay, some of these other ones get into more of like the object type and things like that. But you'll see, okay, so it's a data frame. Probably the most useful one is just the preview, but this is linked data types being used with Python in Excel. So um, we've got different attributes and entities of the data frame that we can display, optionally with our workbook. Okay, so that's linked data types. All right. The next one is, so we looked at reading data in from Power Query. So really there are three basic ways to read data in to Python and Excel. You could use like a range, right? You could use a table. Okay, you could use Power Query. We talked about Power Query. Okay, ranges in general is probably not the best idea unless you're looking to read data in as a very specific type. There are a lot of different types of data in Python. So if you're looking to read data in as maybe something called like a list or NumPy array or things like that, reading things in as a range might make sense. Otherwise, reading data in from a table is probably going to be your next best bet there. So let's quickly look at how do you read data in from a table. So if you do that, we're going to go over here to this NYC population workbook. Those of you who have not worked with a table before would definitely encourage you to do so. Got plenty of resources on that, but we'll see how this is going to look here. One thing to know about a table is that, so this data table is called NYC. Now, if I do NYC here and I start typing a bracket, what you're going to notice is, and I'll put this in the chat here. So if you just go over to the side, NYC bracket, and type that in, you're going to see that there are different entities of the table. So tables are a lot more structured in their approach to what makes up a table, right? So we have this row of a table, we have the borough, we have the population. So if I just selected population, okay, that would just give me the population. If I came back over here and let's say NYC open parentheses or open brackets, and I just say give me the headers, it's just going to give me the headers. So there's a whole structured reference language that makes up Excel tables. That's good to know about for a lot of reasons. One of which is it's going to give us a little bit more surety about what kind of data is actually getting read into Python and Excel. So with that knowledge, let's go ahead. We've got the data set here. Same idea. We're going to call this NYCDF. And we can use the Excel function to write this. Now, if your data is directly in the worksheet, you don't even actually have to write Excel. If you just select the data, it'll write Excel for you because, again, that's the import function. So what we're saying here is this is NYC all, headers equal true. So what does that mean? I'm going to go ahead and control enter that. And if we did NYC all over here, what you'll notice is that's just surety that we are reading in the entire data set. We've got the data itself and we have the headers. Both of those are being read in, and there's just some extra confirmation here that this data set does have headers. Okay, so a lot more that could be said with tables. I'll go ahead and if you did want to actually display this in the worksheet, okay, Control Alt Shift and M is going to be the keyboard shortcut to do that. So we looked at using the data we looked at using the linked data types to kind of preview the data, but if you wanted to actually show the entire data set in the worksheet, you can use that keyboard shortcut, or over here to the left under Python output, there's a drop down that says Python object or Excel value. Just set it to Excel value. And you'll see everything there. So this is entirely linked and dynamic. If I change any of these numbers, right? If I added a row, if I added a column, and that's another nice win for using data in a table or in Power Query is in general, it's going to be quite more extensible than just reading in from a static range. I'm sure we've all had like pivot tables or other references that didn't update the way that we thought that they should have because we were using a static reference, static set of ranges as a reference. So another nice win of using tables right there. Any questions so far? Making sense with what we're doing here? We've got a couple more things we're going to look at, and then that's going to be it for today. Cool. Okay. Thumbs up. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Gold star for participation for one person. Thank you. Okay. So let's look at dynamic Let's look at dynamic arrays next. So you may have been noticing that this whole time, most of the output that we've been exploring spans multiple rows and multiple columns. Okay. If you do have a question, the chat works really well for that. And thank you for the extra participation there. 2 gold stars go out now. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So if you notice, most of the output that we are using here spans multiple rows, multiple columns. And this is a dynamic array. So what does that mean? Well, one thing that might happen is if you have data anywhere where you're trying to spill out the results of Python and Excel, and this isn't just a Python and Excel error, right? You're going to see this spill error. So what is that? This is telling me that this is a dynamic array. If you think about it, we have one Excel function here that is outputting dynamic and a dynamic array, right? Dynamic means it can change in shape and size, and array means it could be more than one thing, right? So we've got an entire, and this is really why, Control Shift and M. So this is the data frame. So right now Excel's a little confused. Like I've got an entire table that you want me to display in one cell. How do I do that? Okay, use a dynamic array and let it spill across the contiguous cells, and now you've got what you want there. Okay, so that is the dynamic array. So same thing as before, if you wanted to count up the number of cells in here or do any kind of operations on the data that you get back from Python and Excel, this could work really well for if you're trying to build like financial models that maybe update based on the number of periods that you're trying to plan and so forth. You can use this feature here. So you notice there is that hash sign there. Okay, E2 with the hash. And you will see that we can refer to this. Now, everything here is going to update. So again, if I added a new row, if I added a new column, and I think if I added one more row, right, we will get that spill error. So as we talked about, what is a spill error? That just means that, there's data kind of blocking what, where Excel wants to place data. So make sure you give yourself a wide berth here if you are going to be using dynamic arrays. But really cool feature here to just be aware of how this kind of works in Python and Excel there. Okay, so that is the dynamic array. That is the spill operator. Okay, and last but not least, let's take a look at how images work in cells. Okay, this knowledge will help you actually build plots here with Python in Excel. Okay, so let's go ahead and build a really basic plot. Again, this is simple data. I think I wrote over the import statement. So let's say nycdf. Let's go ahead and run that. And I'm going to go ahead and let's make a bar chart here. So let's say sns.barplot. Okay, SNS is one of the packages in Python and Excel for data visualization. So there are a couple other ones. This one, you'll see that a lot of the functions that we will have will map to specific plots. So if you want a scatter plot, if you want a bar plot, I kind of like how easy it is to mix and match these different plot types. Let's make a bar plot here. On the x-axis, I'm going to put borough. Okay, on the y-axis, I'm going to put population. Okay, and then we need to specify the data that this comes from nycdf. Let's go ahead and control enter on that. Okay, it looks like there's an error, and I think what I did wrong is I didn't actually specify where this data set comes from. So let's make sure that we do that first. I will put this in the chat when I'm done here. Okay, and let's go ahead and see if that was the error. So that still wasn't enough, I think. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let me put that in the chat. Looks like, as you see, Python and Excel, well, not just Python and Excel, but Python code in general can be a little finicky. I see some people logging in, so if you're just joining us, I just put the link to the files in the chat if you want that. We are recording, and the recording will go out later today. But we have a similar thing happening here. We created a plot with Python. The result type is an image. So before we had data frame, this just says image. So if we click in here, we will get a preview of it, again, with the linked data types. And one option that we have here is if we show the image, right, we still have this linked data type issue. So this doesn't really fix the problem to use the linked data type. Generally, what you'll want to do is let's do a Control Alt Shift and M again to actually show the Excel value rather than the Python object. Again, what do you want to see? Do you want to see the object type, or do you actually want to see the value as it would render in Excel? Most of the time, you probably want to see the values that would render in Excel. So there's that. Now, this image is really, really small. And what we've got here is an image that's placed in a cell. This is another new feature in Excel. Pretty cool. If you've ever needed to like look up images, do like a VLOOKUP to look up images, you could do that. Not so cool that it's really hard to read right now. So how would we fix this? Let's go ahead and you could resize it. This is what not to do. You'll see that it is bigger, but it really kind of messes up the quadrants here of our worksheet. So the better option probably is right here. Let me do that one more time. There's this little button. It says create reference. It's like a little picture with some links. And I'll go ahead and just expand that out. Okay. And now what you'll see is, okay, this is what we want. Now, as far as, again, Python and Excel images, right now, these are pretty much just pictures. So this will update if I, changed a number in here. You'll see that the plot will update for that. However, we really don't have the opportunity to add like a particular tooltip or make it interactive in much of a way. And it looks like my workbook is kind of frozen at the moment, so hopefully I can show you this shortly. Okay. Ugh, come on. All right, we'll give that a moment here. Hopefully those of you who are following along will see that. This was the last point to cover anyway, so if we crash now, I guess it's not the worst place. I could always show you the solution file. Okay, let me force restart Excel and show you the solution file, and then we'll close for now. Okay, come on. Okay, let me stop sharing for a second too and see if that kind of like helps with the resource allocation here. Okay. There we go. Okay. Let me stop Excel and come on. Are we back? No? Okay. Okay. Just a second here. Thank you. Don't save. Okay. And let's look at the solution. And thanks for your patience here. Gotta love live technology. Everybody's anxious on a Friday, it seems. Okay. Let's go back here to the data set. All right. And here's our plot. It looks like I plotted density this time. So let's actually move this back to population. I'm going to plot population here on the y-axis. Okay. And just ignore what the title says right now. If I change these numbers, they will update. We've got the busy signal now, so this is just telling us that the data is still recalculating, but you will see, okay, there we go. Okay, so I wasn't lying. And if we had a new, borough for whatever reason, that would get added as well. So this part will update, right? This is a live image, but we can't right click in here. We don't have tooltips, anything like that. So, maybe that'll change. Again, this is something that Python itself can easily do. You can easily build interactive dashboards and visualizations, just not something that Python and Excel, similar to, data import. You can work with APIs and things like that. Thank you, Bruce. Sorry for the little fart of Excel there for a minute, but we got it done. You can work with data imports with Python, but just not with Python and Excel. Okay, so that's everything for today. Like I said, I thought this would be kind of a shorter session. A couple of things, if my computer lets me, before we log off here, is event feedback. As always, I really appreciate it. Yeah, so yeah, any questions you got, this would be the time to do that. I'm going to put a couple links in the chat if you want to kind of formulate any questions that you've got. Okay. And then what we'll do is, let me put the link to this here too. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. yeah, if you have any questions, you can just use the chat, and then we can take a look at that before we log off. Um, but I just put the link to the feedback. Feedback should take like a minute. It doesn't take long. I really appreciate it. As you'll see from the event calendar, we've got a lot coming up. Almost all of these are free. Most of them are recorded, so you can come to as many as you'd like. Hopefully they will help you out. And then again, the feedback just, helps me get the data that I need to operate. Unfortunately, I can't teach Excel for free week long, so I can use any kind of data, referrals, reviews, testimonials that you'd like to give me on that end. But other than that, I think there was one kind of question come in via the chat from Bruce. Otherwise, you're free to log off. I'll go ahead and thank you, Christian. Thank you, Baljeet. And I think it was somebody logged off. Suvik also kind of gave me a couple thumbs up. That really helps, just so I know that the pacing makes sense. I'm going to go ahead and thank you, Raymond. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. So if you do have any final questions, let me know, and then I will see you next time, I hope. So have a great weekend. Thanks so much. Thank you, Baljeet. Thank you, Christian. Stop recording.